We will now call the meeting to order. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the regular meeting. Roll call.
Mrs. Weider?
Here.
Mr. Simons?
Present.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Here.
Mrs. Moore?
Here.
Mrs. Kessler?
Here. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance.
Where's the flag?
Is it around the corner?
What are we looking at?
It's an imaginary flag.
Okay.
It's around the corner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, sir.
Now it's out.
I knew it was there.
Next is approval and/or revision of the agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda as stated.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, Mrs. Petter?
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Weider?
Yes. Thank you. Next is the inspirational message from Heritage Hill Elementary School.
Well, good evening, Heritage Hill, and everyone else who's guests and visitors tonight. As always, we appreciate all the families who come out, support your children, and are with us throughout the whole school year in a positive light as we make home and school connections each year. Tonight, we are excited to be performing at the first Board of Education inspirational message tonight. Our message is, be the light that leads others. Our students will be continuing to take greater leadership at Heritage Hill as we ignite the spark to shine. We look forward to sharing our student-created mission statement with you that our students, parents, community all came together at the end of last school year, and we are empowering each student to achieve their personal best. So at this time, please welcome our third and fourth grade students with a few select fifth grade students under the direction of Miss Jacqueline Ard.
This is the new row. Go to Miss Ard. Follow Miss Ard.
Again, thank you, Heritage Hill families, parents, grandparents, siblings that came out today, and please be excited because we look forward to shining our light for the 23-24 school year. And don't forget, I have to say it, Friday morning, parent engagement team, second cup of coffee. We're hoping to see everybody from Heritage Hill families participate Friday at 9:15, and there will be included an encore performance Friday morning, so see you Friday.
Happens about me and your fat Gina.
It's gonna be in your head all night.
That one's gonna be hard to let go of.
John had it last. Red Sox. Doesn't look like he did anything.
You know, I'm always sporting. You know that. Oh, man.
Are you over here in my work?
Yes.
Don't steal my work.
Yes, yes.
I'm not signing that.
Thank you. What a treat.
My skirt came.
Next is the recognition of visitors. Do we have any?
I have not received any.
Okay. Then next is the recognition of Eagle Scout project completions.
Thank you. Could I have Higgins and Dylan Coyle come up here on the stage and stand while we brag on you a little bit? The board wishes to recognize Higgins, 11th grade, Princeton High School, and Dylan Coyle, a 12th grader from Princeton High School, for completing their Eagle Scout projects. Right there in the middle and get good pictures. Higgins knew she wanted to create an Eagle Scout project that was environmentally friendly and beneficial to her community. After volunteering at the Springdale Food Bank, this Princeton High School junior recognized a need for fresh fruits and vegetables in the offerings. Building a garden at Springdale Elementary was a way to teach elementary students about planting, life cycles, and healthy nutrition while providing food sources for the food bank. Higgins held fundraisers and car washes to pay for the materials, seeds, and tools to build a nursery and raise garden beds. With the help of Troop 11417, B's junior gardeners, Principal Lisa Tinbridge, and the city of Springdale, Ohio, the garden has grown into quite an impressive site under Higgins' leadership. To date, over 100 pounds of food have been donated to the Springdale Food Pantry. For Dylan Coyle's Eagle Scout project, he built a Hope Squad sensory garden for Princeton Community Middle School. Nestled behind the school near the gym doors, this project not only showcases Dylan's dedication to scouting, but also highlights his commitment to making a lasting positive impact on our community. Hope Squad is a school-based peer-to-peer suicide prevention program aimed at fostering a supportive and caring environment with educational institutions. Hope Squad members are students who are trained to identify signs of emotional distress or thoughts of suicide in their peers, and then act as a bridge between those individuals and trusted adults or mental health professionals who can provide assistance. In a world filled with constant challenges, Dylan's vision for a sensory garden offers a haven of solace and rejuvenation for the students and staff of Princeton Community Middle School. The garden project emphasizes the values of scouting, the importance of leadership, service, and community engagement. Dillon's Hope Squad Sensory Garden embodies the spirit of hope, compassion, inclusivity, leaving a legacy that will continue to flourish for generations to come. We'd like to thank you both and honor you. Great job.
Yes.
Good job.
Next is Attendance Awareness Month, September 2023.
Thank you. The Board of Education of the Princeton City School District in Cincinnati, Ohio, met in regular session at 6:30 on September 11th, 2023, with the following members present: Ms. Susan Whiter, President; Mr. John Simons, Vice President; Ms. Mary Cleveland; Ms. Jody Kessler; and Ms. Gina Ruffin-Moore. The board wishes to proclaim the following. Whereas a nation is experiencing a school absenteeism crisis brought on by COVID-19 pandemic and other challenges that have eroded positive conditions for learning at school, including physical and emotional health and safety, a sense of belonging, connection and support, academic challenges and engagement, and adults and peers with social emotional competency, which motivates students and families to show up and engage. And whereas reducing chronic absences, missing 10% or more of school for any reason, requires taking a comprehensive, trauma-informed approach and starts with prevention and early intervention, including developing routines and trusting relationships that create a sense of belonging rather than responding with punitive action, which research finds is not particularly effective. And whereas improving attendance and engagement takes school, family, elected leaders, and other community partners work together to rebuild regular and trusting communications and to identify and address barriers to being in school. And whereas students are more likely to attend school when positive conditions for learning, physical and emotional health and safety, a sense of belonging, connection and support, academic challenge and engagement, and adult and peers with social emotional competency are in place. And whereas promoting attendance requires noticing as soon as possible when students are starting to miss too much school in order to engage students and families, identify and offer the needed support and early intervention resources. And whereas ensuring an equal opportunity to learn requires use of data to detect high levels of absenteeism, missed opportunities to learn by school, grade, and student population. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Princeton City School District Board of Education stands with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month and hereby committed to focusing on reducing absenteeism and addressing the factors that cause students to miss school, whether offered at a distance, in person, or blended, in order to ensure all children are equitable opportunities to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially, and recognize that all must work together to engage students and families and send the message that learning can and must continue, whether students participate in person, remotely, or through blended approaches.
And now the proclamation for National Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th,
Thank you, ma'am.
2023.
Thank you, ma'am. The Board of Education of the Princeton City School District, Cincinnati, Ohio, met in regular session at 6:30 p.m. on the 11th day of September 2023 with the following members present: Ms. Susan Wider, President; Mr. John Simons, Vice President; Ms. Mary Cleveland; Ms. Jody Kessler; and Ms. Gina Ruffin-Moore. The board wishes to proclaim the following: whereas Hispanic Americans played an integral role in history before the early days of the pioneer to our current legacy of leaders in international trade, technology, education, and aerospace. And whereas Hispanic Americans share a rich cultural and linguistic heritage and are an virtual part of our economy. And whereas Hispanic Americans have enriched our social, intellectual, and artistic life in the United States of America. And whereas Hispanic Americans are the youngest and fastest growing segment of the United States of America, are expected to contribute 60% of the nation's population growth through 2050. And whereas 34% of our district's student population is of Hispanic descent. And whereas celebrating National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th allows us to appreciate and validate the diversity and character of our students, parents, teachers, and staff. Now therefore, be it resolved, the Princeton City School District Board of Education does hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month in the Princeton City School District, and encourages teachers, administrative staff, support personnel, and students to participate in activities in promotion of National Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Moore. Next is the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Wider?
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is the approval of the August 2023 financial report.
I move to approve the August 2023 financial report as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter?
On your monthly financial report document, just a couple notes here. Property tax for Hamilton County did not settle in August, which is the first time in several years. They will settle hopefully in September, but that's the cause of lower August revenue than anticipated. Expenses, the only item there I want to start bringing your attention to is August. We did see some of the first contracts seeing the increases for this year. You will see the bigger jump in September because most of our employees have 9/1 contracts. So you'll see salary jump up there, and that's typical as we put increases in place. On the ESSER report, I know I keep saying this, but actually next month it will completely come true. We only had one outstanding purchase order last month from the ESSER 2 fund. We paid that the first week in September, so you'll actually see the ESSER 2 grant completely finished. We then will just have one column on our chart for ESSER 3, which we will roll through this year and close that one out next year. And then we'll be finished with all the pandemic funding. On your 018 report, I did want to acknowledge the donations we've been receiving, over $7,000 for the Hispanic Heritage Festival. Lots of great donations. I know there's some more that hit the banks after we closed August, so you'll see that. And remember, the festival is September 30th, so lots of good news there. And that's all I have.
That's all she has.
Okay. Well, I was looking to see if there's anything else. Next is
Mrs.
approval of transfers.
No, we
Oh,
have to-
I'm
I'll call the
sorry.
roll. Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler?
Yes.
Mrs. Wider?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Simons?
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes, and I apologize. Next is approval of transfers and advances.
I move to approve the transfers and advances as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded.
This is just a $50,000 transfer from the athletics tournament fund into the athletics operation fund.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Mrs. Kessler,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is approval of revision to Appendix G of the Princeton Association of Classroom Educators contract.
I move to approve the revision to Appendix G of the PACE contract as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is approval of contract with Ram Clean Cleaning Services for school year 2023-2024.
Move to approve the contract with Ram Cleaning Services for school year 23-24.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mrs. Petter?
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder.
Yes. Motion passes. Next is approval of Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with Bethany School.
I move to approve the MOU with Bethany School as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, or are there any questions? If not, Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Mr. Simons.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is approval of membership in the Ohio Alliance of Black School Educators School Year 2023-2024.
I move to approve the membership in the Ohio Alliance of Black School Educators for school year 2023-2024 as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Kessler,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next is academic update.
So the curriculum team will be up here to have the academic update. I think you'll like it, too.
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We are very excited to share. We're even going to share like a few days early because the state hasn't released everything officially. So this is still preliminary. We think it's going to be released on September 13th. We don't expect any changes, but we do want to make sure that we put that out there, that it'll probably go live on the Cincinnati Enquirer on the 13th, is what they said. So I want to thank Mr. Zendry, who's in charge of our data analytics. We've been working him really hard lately to get all of this data information. So if you have any questions, we'll make sure we get back with you with more specifics. But again, we are excited to share our report card. So our star rating descriptions, remember last year was the first year that they went to the star rating. So we just want to remind you that the 5 stars means that we significantly exceeded the state standard in academic achievement. The 4 stars, we exceed state standards, and the 3 is we meet state standards, and the 2 means we need support to meet the state standards. So we're the first year for overall ratings, which is at the top, so that is our first year. You will see that the district got a 4 for overall.
That's good news.
That is amazing news. We're very excited about that. And then I'll go over more of them as well, but we see we got a 3 stars in achievement, which is up from 2 the year before, so excited about that one. And then the one that we were really counting on having a repeat was the progress component, which was at 5 stars, and the gaps closing, which is also at 5 stars. So those 2 are repeating. So I do have to clap for everyone for that. And then the graduation rate went up to 3 stars for the district. The one that maintained the same is the early literacy, and so we'll talk a little bit more about what we need to do with that. And last week we talked, or the last time we presented, we talked about the college career, and that is not currently being calculated. So just to go over those things again, if you have questions later about, so the overall rating is the 4 stars, and it is made up of achievement, progress, gap closing, graduation rate. They combine that all. Here are the percentages that calculate into the overall average. Of course, we're going for 5 stars next year, but for the first time out of the gate, we're pretty excited with exceeding the state expectations. The next one is achievement, and like we talked about in 2022, that means we needed a little bit of work to meet the state standards. We knew we were very close. Again, they don't do indicators met anymore. It is just the performance index, or the students moving towards proficiency. And so we're very excited to be at the 3 stars, meaning that we meet the state standards. I meant to say this as soon as I got up here, and I've been praising our amazing teachers and our amazing students. They have really worked hard to make this happen. We have such amazing educators. We talked about that. We had our principal meeting today, and we just talked about that to make sure that we go back and we celebrate with the teachers, we celebrate with the students, because sometimes we don't get to go back and celebrate. We go back and talk about what we have to do differently, what we have to do next, how we're going to respond, and we're still going to have to talk about some of those things, but we have to celebrate because this is great news. So kudos to everyone for that. We already talked about achievement. We just wanted to show you the breakdown of the performance index over time. And I think that's why it's so exciting for me to stand here, because I was here in 2016-17 when we had to come and tell you not great news all the time. So it's very exciting to see that number move up, performance index. We know that that is a very hard number to change. That is because students moving from limited to basic to proficient. And we talked a lot about how hard that was for us to change. But again, thank you guys for your support, and thank the teachers for sticking with it, and the principals, because even though it was hard work, it happened, and it keeps going up over time. So we're going to keep moving forward. Progress, which used to be called value added, again, that is the 5 stars. So you're taking one student from where they are to where they need to be. So it's the growth for each individual student. So sometimes we talk a lot about maybe our students aren't proficient in 4th grade, but that child grow tremendously from point A to point B. And the progress is telling us absolutely, the kids are growing. So we hope that we continue with the progress, and that continues to move up the achievement. That's what we feel like has impacted that achievement result. The progress has been high, especially at the elementary, and then the middle school and high school were the past couple years. And as that continues, then the achievement will continue to grow. It takes a child, we talked about, many years sometimes to get on track, but as long as they're growing more than expected every year, they will definitely get there. The gap closing is just like we talked about, closing the gap. So we know that they have a longer distance to go. So that's comparing the different subgroups on how they're performing in comparison to another subgroup. So each year that target increases, and again, our students have continued to increase with that. And you can see the different subgroups. That includes our gifted indicator. We did meet chronic absenteeism as a district. We had 2 buildings that did not. We're going to save some of the attendance till we do the follow-up on the homelessness that we promised from before for our English learners. We're going to do a student services presentation in October, and then we'll hear more about chronic absenteeism. But without meeting that indicator as a district, we would not have retained a 5 at gap closing. So that was a huge win. We still have some buildings that are working on it, but that's a great thing. We know our English learners, graduation rate, so all of those things have helped continue with that number 5 stars for the next year. And then graduation rate came out as a 3 stars. Last year that was a 2-star that we reported. So you can see that our graduation, remember, is a year in the rear. So this is reporting the 4-year from last year and the 5-year from the year before. So, but you can see that that's going up. Last year was 2, this year is a 3-star. And then again, early literacy, just a reminder that that calculation counts on proficiency in 3rd grade, promotion to 4th grade, and improving K-3 literacy. I know Mrs. Hill will talk a little bit about this, and our teachers have really been very supportive. We made some changes at the start of this year. We used to give our kids a diagnostic assessment right as they came back to school in the first 2 weeks. And we still have to give it pretty soon, but we at least waited till the 3rd week so that they had a little bit of time to get into the rhythm of things. We hope that that will help with this. But this is a challenge for us, and I know that the elementary teachers are working hard on that. And then we already talked about that one last week, not in the calculation yet, but it's coming for 2025. So we'll continue to monitor our ACT scores, our workforce, our AP and IP tests. So I wanted Mrs. Hill to talk a little bit more about what the plans are at elementary level to continue the progress going, and Mrs. Stiles for the secondary.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. This is so exciting, Tanya. That's a tough act to follow, but it is so exciting. First of all, I would like to thank our principals, our teachers, our instructional coaches, our families, just for all the work that has been done to make this collaborative effort work. One of the things that we're doing at the elementary is to really focus on that daily intervention time. So intervention doesn't always mean that you're performing below, but also enriching students' ability to be their best selves, to push them over that hump with their growth. So we're really focusing on that on a weekly basis. We're also looking at the curriculum instructional strategies. So oftentimes we think about instructional strategies as something that's academic, but we have to look at the culture in the classroom and looking at what's happening and how kids feel. So that's something we're looking at as well to make sure we're, looking at the whole child. Personalized learning for the students, we're really focusing again on the reading and the math with our iReady, because those students have the opportunity to really personalize learning so that they're learning at their pace. And then our principals are monitoring that weekly, and we're not only looking at their time on task, but how many lessons that they're passing. Because if we can look at what they need help with, we can intervene with teacher instruction that's led right away. So we're looking at that as well. We're still collaborating with our partners, so we are iReady and our Success for All partners. So they come on site, we collaborate with them, and we actually look at data together, so that's what we're gonna continue to do as well. Readiness assessments from ODE, our students will have time to practice for the OST in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. So that mimics the real test. So they'll look at the standards, the strands, how to take the test, what the questions look like, because that practice piece helps them feel real comfortable and more comfortable when they're taking the assessment. And not the technology. We need not to test the technology, but their knowledge of what we're testing them on. And then early literacy piece. So I know we are at a 2, which is growth, so we have to focus on the growth. That is a measure that we are really looking at and focusing on for our students. Like Ms. Wright said, that there are 3 components that comprise that score. So when we look at the monthly District K-5 teacher instructional coaches meetings, we're going back to that. So all the K-5 teachers once a month will come on a Zoom with their grade level with an instructional coach and have a focus on what we need to be better at. So if there are things happening at a different building, we can share strategies with all 8 buildings. So we're excited to bring that back as well. And then the reading improvement and monitoring plan, our RIMP plans, that is one of the things that we do have to show that year's worth of growth. So we're going to look at that again in more detail, look at focus, target, skills, and measure that and monitor a little more closely with progress monitoring. And thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. So to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the secondary level, we are going to continue our focus on our Tier 1 evidence-based strategies. One of our main areas of focus last year and is going to continue this year, actually district-wide, is our implementation of cooperative learning structures. We did them today during our Leadership Academy. We do them in a lot of our district-level meetings so that we can model what those structures look like, and we're continuing that work at the secondary level. We trained 60 staff members last year as a part of our leadership group, and 25 of those staff members were from the secondary team, grades 6 through 12. So we're doing phase 2 of that, where they're putting those practices into place this year, and then we will have a certified trainer come in and do job-embedded coaching to give them feedback on how they're facilitating those structures. We are also implementing Tier 3 meetings every 6 weeks. The first one for the high school will be this week, and then for the middle school and Innovation Center next week, where we will be developing intervention plans for math, English, behavior, and attendance. So we will take a closer look at those students who are really struggling in those 4 areas and work to develop comprehensive plans to help them be more successful. We will also continue our quarterly secondary department chair meetings to maintain a common language of instruction to ensure that vertical alignment. We meet every other month with all of our 612 department chairs, and they sit in cooperative learning groups where they will talk about content-specific things related to their subject area. So for example, this first meeting that we had, they broke down the OST and EOC scores to determine the 5 areas of strength and the 5 areas of weakness, and then are working to break down those questions to figure out what is it that the students aren't understanding and how can we teach differently, what strategies can we use to teach differently so that the students understand those concepts more. And we really want to work and do that grades 6 through 12 so that we have that vertical alignment. We also are working with our instructional coaches, and the same thing is happening at the elementary where we have our instructional coaching cycles. And the 4 areas of focus for this year are going to be a learner-friendly culture. That's the Q1 focus. Continuing with cooperative learning, explicit vocabulary instruction, and our elective teachers are going to play an active role in that this year, as well as questioning and different types of questioning, open and closed questioning, and higher order thinking questioning will be our focus for this year, and that also aligns with our instructional round process and the data that we collect, and we know that we need to work and improve in those areas. And then lastly, specific to our EL and our special ed students, we were very fortunate to get an EL grant this year, and we are using some of those funds to implement co-teaching practices for both our special ed students and our EL students, and we will be partnering with Hamilton County where they will come in, help us plan for that professional learning, and then also do that job-embedded professional development where they go in, watch our teachers implement those practices, and then provide feedback and tell them what the next steps should be to help improve that instructional practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a,
So we do, if there are any questions, we did put some more specific data by building later so that you could see that. We didn't want to take too much of your time, but we do have that in your packet so that you can see some specifics on how each building breaks down. We shared the district tonight.
so I have one question,
Yes.
and that is, when the board recently passed the opportunity to attend all-day kindergarten, how do you think that will affect the literacy?
We will be able to tell you November 1st. That is our goal, the first board meeting of November, because we're testing those first graders now. So we have to sort out which students attended full-day kindergarten with us. And so the score is based on when they start first grade, are they on track or not on track?
Right.
So we'll be able to tell you that in November to get you the best number of, these are the kids that were with us for a full day of kindergarten, and when they took this test in late September, here are the kids that passed and are currently on track. So we will give you that specific number. We're planning the first board meeting in November. We already were working on that, because we are very curious too and excited about the continued progress. We feel like that's going to come along, especially with the adjustments we made of when we're giving the test, and that was a huge investment in their growth, what is the full-day kindergarten. So we're hoping that we see results sooner than later, but we'll know specifically in November to be able to tell you that.
Thank you.
That was a good question. Gina?
Oh, I'm sorry. Without telling me the name of the school, or schools plural, were there any schools that got the really high number of stars overall?
We did have a school that got the 5 stars, yes. So we're very excited that if you turn your page in your packet, the breakdown for all the schools is there for you, so.
Okay, we don't have the packet.
It looks really, okay.
Is there a packet? That was my question. I'm like, how did we get a packet?
Oh, I'm like, oh, you don't have the nice
Okay, because you kept saying a packet. I'm like,
They
okay.
were doing such a good job, I got lost in
Then you worked
that great news.
Ask for a
That's
copy
my
of the
fault.
presentation.
Sorry.
You're good. But what page now?
That would be on the 3rd page from the back.
Okay.
And we wanted to make sure that we celebrate all of our schools because they truly all did amazing. And it's been a team effort because you will notice as you look at them, some of the scores, some schools dropped slightly and then some went up. And so I think that's what it is. It's all about the teamwork because the teamwork resulted in improvement for the district. So whether somebody had a year that was a little further down or up, it still came through as a district with the 4 stars. So we're very proud of it.
Teamwork, yeah.
Well, that describes us, doesn't it, Gina?
Yes, it does. But for all the schools, did they all improve?
It depends on which area. Some did not. Some kept the same, some went down in certain areas, but most of them are all meeting the state expectations. But you will see the by building the rating, by building achievement, by building progress. So we do have to talk, and that's one of the great things about our multi-tiered system of supports work. This entire team, every 6 weeks, is meeting with each building. And so we spent a lot of time talking about their students in that are scoring in the tier 3 range, meaning they're scoring in the 10th percentile or low on their iReady or MAP assessment, and we're making plans for that. So I think that'll really help us get to specific building needs if they did see a fluctuation. And sometimes fluctuations are just natural, but we have to address it. And like I said, I think some of the buildings last year, they had a slight dip, and then they came roaring back to the very top. So I think you just have to know that you're doing the right things, and we do know that we know this assessment does grade one day of the year. So we know that that's really tough for a lot of kids. But our kids and teachers have been putting in that work. But if you see a fluctuation, as long as we know they're doing the right thing, we expect it to bounce back up.
These are impressive numbers. I'm very happy. I'm excited.
We are as well. So. Hopefully you'll be seeing a lot of buildings celebrating. Some, I think Sharonville put out their celebration. Some people are waiting for it to come out in the Cincinnati Enquirer and those things, but I think everyone is it's very nice to see your hard work. Everyone has worked hard all the years I've been at Princeton, but to see the efforts and the adjustments that are made come to light on a report card is definitely a celebration for us.
It's huge. Yeah.
It's very nice.
Love it.
Thank
I
you.
just hope our angle of the story is told. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, now, I hate to talk about when I worked for Cincinnati Public Schools, but 2 days before it came out in the Enquirer, we always put out a news release. Because we wanted to show our angle before it got twisted with all the other school angles. But
Yes.
things are different now.
And I think we just always want to make sure that there's not a change, and
Right.
our angle, it's all celebration right now. So I feel like we have a lot that Mrs. Roddy is ready.
beautiful.
We always can grow, not that we want 5s in everything. But the work has been there. There's enough stories that I think that the data will speak for itself in this way. So hopefully she has an easier job with communicating it, and I can help her in any way to do that. So, thank you all. so
Because if
very
we
much.
don't communicate it, no one else will.
Okay, we're ready. Yes, the building principals are ready, the district is ready, because like I said, there's so many times that we do have to work on the counter communication, but this is really positive.
This is proactive,
And our students and staff, and we are all very excited about it. So, thank
Great
you.
job. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
For that report.
Thank you. Next is the treasurer's report.
Board of Education, tomorrow is the hotel lottery for the conference. Everybody think positive thoughts tonight. If I haven't heard from you, I'm assuming you're staying both nights. So I'll let you know how that goes for us. Southwest OSBA Fall Conference is October 12th at Laurel Oaks. If you're interested in going, please let me know. We'll get you registered. And you have in front of you the work session topics from our work session. And I will give you the original so you can check for yourself.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, as we know, today is 9/11, and I wanted to mention that. And while everybody was affected in the way of life, some more than others, so keep those people in your thoughts. I told the leadership earlier, I had a friend who lost a father in that, and I can still remember the call and his voice and the squeal in his voice, so just keep those folks, everybody in your thoughts and prayers there. Do have some good news. The OSBA Capital Conference Student Achievement Fair. We have 2 groups on Monday, November 13th from 10 to 2 that will be taking part. One will be navigating the ship, the Princeton Viking learning ship. Miss Tanya Key and her interns have a presentation they'll do, talking about the internships that the kids did this summer. So I'm really excited about that. And then the Princeton High School photographers in digital art, Miss Lindsay Holliday and Jessica Durham, will be there as well with print and digital images, and they also have screens and have videos so they can show people the process it took to get those things done. So I know we had talked about that, and I think I sent that to you in a weekly report, but I wanted to make sure that we let everybody know that we're excited about that. When we go to SBA, we'll see our kids and our teachers there presenting and doing great things they're doing here at Princeton. Friday, September 1st was Community Officials and Staff Appreciation Night at the ball game. The band and the cheerleaders did a great job, but I just wanted to let people know we're really excited about the number of community officials that were there. While it was my first one, I heard that it was a nice number of folks there, and then the staff showed up as well. And then all our students that participated in everything did a great job, so really excited about that. This Friday, September 15th, we have a lot going on at the game. It is band night, it is Little Vikes cheer and youth football night, and it is military appreciation night. So we have a lot going on. I actually get to lead the band, the middle school band, so don't laugh at me, but that'll be my first time ever, so we'll see how that goes. I got to practice on Thursday, so I'm going to try to do the best I can. And then also we've had the Lincoln Heights Parade September 2nd, and the Springdale Community Bash was this last Saturday. So it's really good for me personally to get out and see people and meet people and shake hands, and just what amazes me the most is I walk in and a lady says, "Don't I know you?" And I said, "Well, maybe." She said, "You were my kid's principal at Princeton, just a grade level principal." And we started talking, and she told me what her kids were doing, and I remembered them, their names, and they're out doing great things. And everywhere I go, I hear those things, like, "You were this," or "You knew this kid," and it just makes me feel really good. First of all, that I must have did something decent that they remember me, and second, that our kids are doing such great things. So, and I love how Princeton folks will brag on our kids and Princeton folks, and that makes me excited. And then Ms. Petter mentioned Hispanic Heritage Festival, September 30th. Ms. Martinez and the people working with her have done a great job of getting people there, so we expect it to be bigger and better. My first one, so I'm really excited to be there for that. So those are some of the things that have been happening. I have been able to get in the buildings quite a bit and see kids and see the teaching, and I do want to say thank you to the curriculum team because doing the presentation, but also to all the cabinet, the teachers, the staff, the kids, the community, because those numbers are great and it's exciting. That's a lot to, we need to keep improving, and that's going to be our goal. So in some areas we got some improvement, in other areas we just want to stay up there where we're at. So thank you to everybody there and all our staff and kids and students and everybody that made that happen.
Thank you. And I might say thank you for mentioning 9/11, because my very best friend in grade school, high school, and college was working in the World Trade Center. And 2 men dragged her to safety and took her all the way as far as they could and called her husband. But, you know, she's been through a lot. So, thank you. Next on the agenda is executive session to discuss under sections 121.22G1 to consider the employment of a public official and 8 of the Ohio Revised Code. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
Before we go into executive session,
Oh,
again, I'd like to at least acknowledge what we're about to do at the Southwest Region Conference. We have our jazz combo will be performing, so I would hope that anybody who can get to the event, please come to see our students perform. And then we also, I had the opportunity to recognize one of our groups here from Princeton with an award. And so we will be awarding our Worth Ethic Certificate program at the event as well. So again, you know, kudos to our teams that are going to be there, but I want to make sure that I acknowledge publicly that we will be receiving an award and our students will be performing.
Is that the October 12th event?
Yes.
thank you for letting us know. Anything else?
I don't think we completed the conversation about executive session.
Well,
No, we
somebody
didn't.
has to make a
We need a
motion to
motion.
go there.
I move to approve going into executive session as presented.
Second.
It
Don't
is,
you have to list the reasons?
She gave the reasons.
Oh, but in your motion, you don't have to list the reasons?
Okay, for the reasons that were stated.
To consider the employment of a
She
public
gave the reason.
official.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Petter?
Mrs. Kessler,
Yes.
Mrs. Wyder,
Yes.
Mr. Simons,
Yes.
Mrs. Cleveland,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Action.
Is there going to be action?
I don't know why we're going in, so I can't say.
Okay.
I don't think there will be action.
Usually there's no action.